The Mishnah had said that if somebody throws something through a puddle in a public thoroughfare, that this puddle is going to count as the public space, and carrying in there is going to be chayiv. Normally, water we would say is not a reshus harabim. Water is a carmelis, and here, since it's a part of the street, it counts as reshus harabim. Now, how as a public domain? Now, how big is this? So we said it's less than 10 tefachim deep, and it's going to count. The Gemara says, why did the Mishnah have to say this statement twice? To tell you that that when you can walk through something, but reluctantly, but difficultly, it's not the way you want the path to be. Nevertheless, it's going to count as a path, and therefore it's going to be something you're chayiv on for carrying. And also tashmish tashmish, that is a difficult usage of something as a space, as your public sphere space is also going to count as a usage. But why did I have to mention the puddle twice? So we understand why it says walking through there twice, but why does it mention the puddle twice? The Gemara says to tell you both in the winter and the summer the same. The halach is the same. Ela rakak zimni lamali. One for the winter, one for the summer, and to tell you, if it had only said it once, I may have thought either the winter or the summer is when this is true, because people would walk through there more easily or less reluctantly during that season. I may have thought only in the summer. The Avid Inshi, the Maski Lakuri Rav Shai, people walk through a puddle because they're hot, and so they don't mind the cool water to cool them off a little bit. But in the winter, people are cold and chilly already. To walk through a puddle is going to make it even worse. And if we said it in the winter, because they're already muddy from the way, so walking through some water, big deal. They don't mind. Where their feet are dusty a little bit, but they're not. But they're clean. Generally, if they walk through the puddle, now they're going to get all dirty, so they won't want to walk through. Abaye says another reason that it's needed. I may have thought, that's only if the puddle is not 4 amos. With the puddle is more than 4 amos, which is about 6 feet. People would walk around it, even though it's difficult, rather than walk through it, because that's too much. Therefore, our Mishnah tells us that it's even more. Ravashi, I may have thought, that's only if it's 4 amos. Where it's not that big. So our text says arba, which means arba tefachim, and that's not that doesn't seem correct. So they changed it to arba. But earlier in Rabbi Chananel for sure he does say arba tefachim, and the concept being 4 tefachim, 12 inches is something that people can jump over. So mifsi pasile, maybe if people would just jump over it. Therefore, that it is something that you would walk through and still counts as a part of the public domain.
Yeah, in the art scroll it says arba'at tefachim. No comments or no, just saying.
Yeah, that's the problem with 4 tefachim is that it doesn't have any source of in our Mishnah that we would have thought 4 tefachim, maybe 6, maybe 8, maybe 10. Who tells you how much a person can jump over? Where would we have had the number 4? The Mishnah only tells us 4 amos as the carrying space. But in any case, the Rabbi Chananel does say 4 tefachim, and but others change the text to arba, which means 4 amos. As we know, in Hebrew, even the numbers have a masculine or a feminine, and for tefachim, it would be the masculine arba, and for amos, it would be the feminine arba, as the suffix of amos is the feminine suffix, and the suffix for tefachim is the masculine suffix. In any case, if it was 4, a person could jump over it. Therefore, it tells us still it counts as this water counts as a part of the public way, and carrying it is going to be chayav. So they had wood bridges, and on a wood bridge, one of there was a patch of wood to fix it. So there's an extra or a replacement peg or piece of wood, a slat, and it lands on that one mechayiv. You're going to be chayiv sharabim b'kimboy, because the majority of people walk through it, even though that some people would jump over it and some people would avoid that because it seems loose or dangerous. Nevertheless, it counts as a part of the bridge because people walk through it. So to over here, this puddle, even though that some people may indeed jump over it, but since it's a part of the thoroughfare and people walk through it, it counts as the Rishus Harab. As I mentioned at the beginning, the halacha of a sea, a lake, river, they are all Carmelists. They're not a public thoroughfare because you don't easily walk through it. So it's not part of the street. It's also not private domain, so it's Carmelists. And we know the halacha Carmelists is you may not carry rabbinically. There's a prohibition. The Rabbanan is an Isser not to carry from the public domain into private, or private domain into the Carmelists. And within the Carmelists itself, you may carry 4 amos. The next mission is going to discuss what about if you had a boat, a ship in the water. So the boat itself could constitute a private domain because it has 10 tefachim height, which is approximately 30 inches or so. So you have about 10 tefachim height, and you have 4 wide. So you have a public domain, a private domain, and the water is a Carmelist. So can you draw up water from the sea, ocean, river into the boat, and can you pour from the boat into the other space? Since you're not allowed to move from a private domain to public domain and vice versa. So zarek min hayam li'abasha, somebody throwing from the sea to land, min hayabasha li'yam, and from the land to the sea, min hayam l'sfina min asfina li'yam, or from the sea to the boat and the boat to the sea, umin asfina chaverta, or from one boat to another, putter. Even though that it's not allowed, it is exempt of it because it's not a Torah prohibition. It's not a public thoroughfare. It's not a Rishus Harabim de Oraisa, a public sphere de Oraisa. Rather, it's rabbinic as a Carmelist. And therefore, even though that it's prohibited, you don't bring a chatas off. Sfinas kashuras ubezu. If you have boats that are actually tied to each other, connected to each other, metaltam mezuluzu, you're allowed to carry from one of the boats to the other. However, if they're not tied, even if they are near each other and they are encircling each other, they're close to each other enough that they can be considered one. You're not allowed to carry from one to the other. So Itma the Gemara explains. Sfina, a boat, Ravhuna Ama Mitzina Menaziz Koshu Mamalik. So how do you get water from the sea, ocean, river into your boat? So you just put out a little ledge. That's what Rav Huna says. You just put a little piece of wood, a ledge over it, and you bring it in from there. And the Gemara is going to explain later why. However, Rav Chisda and Rabba bar Rav Huna, Rav Huna's son Rabba, and Rav Chisda, they say, Amri, you need to make a platform of 4 tefachim, by 4 tefachim, and a hole in that platform. And through that hole, you're going to draw up the water. And Rashi says it also has to have a little bit of a ledge. Tosa says it has to have a full ledge, the depth of 4 tefachim, the depth of 10 tefachim. It doesn't have 10 tefachim depth. So there, according to Tues, it's actually got like a tube or a square 10 tefachim deep box or tube coming out of it, the bottom of this ledge. And according to Rashi, just got a little lip as a ledge, and that's enough to create a separate carmelist space. And then through that hole, you can draw up water and into the boat. So the Gemara explains. Rav Huna, all you have to do is put a little bit of a ledge out, and you can pull up water from there. How do we measure where the carmelis is? The carmelis is the seabed, the bottom of the water. And since a carmelis, like a public thoroughfare, only goes up 10 tefachim, so really the water is covering the carmelis top airspace. So you're in carmelis airspace when you're drawing water from the sea into your boat. And therefore, you're really drawing it from a makom putter, no man's land, a space that's permissible to carry from. And really, you should be allowed to carry into a private domain from this makom putter, from the airspace above 10 tefachim of the airspace of the carmelis. But nevertheless, the Chachamim don't allow you to do that because it looks too much like a carmelis. And so as long as you make a little bit of a hecker, you make a little ledge that indicates that you're drawing water up through that one spot, it's permissible. And Avira makom putter, because that airspace is really a makom putter, permissible space. Obedinu, this is namilelebe. Really, you don't even need such a ledge. Ella, but rather, in order to show some sort of hecker, some sort of recognition that I'm carrying from there into here, you make this ledge, and then people will not mistake it with carrying from a regular carmelis into a private space. However, Rav Chisda Rabbi Rav Huna, they say that you have to make such a ledge of 4x4 and with a lip or a full 10 tefachim edge, and then from there you can carry it in. So the Gemara says, what's their opinion? Kasari, they are of the opinion, carmelis misvas mayim ashkin, that you measure carmelis from the water surface. Maya ares michta, because essentially the ground and the water is all one area, and so the top of the water is where the 10 tefachim begins. So if you don't make a 4x4 ledge coming out of your boat, you're carrying from the carmelis, which is the water surface, into your private domain. And that's prohibited, and therefore you have to make this box through which it gets its own Rosh Hashanah space over the carmelis, and you're carrying through there. So Rav Nachman explains, according to Rabbi Ravua and Rav Huna, the Amam Moitzi is this culture that say all you need is a little ledge, and that's enough to carry. Zimnin the leka asara. How can you do that? Maybe there's less than 10 tefachim from the seabed. Maybe you're in a very shallow water. And therefore you're carrying from a carmelis, which is the quasi-rabbinic, it's the rabbinic public domain, into your private domain. No, we know that a boat cannot go in, cannot travel in water that's less than 10 tefachim, 30 inches deep. A raft, perhaps, but not a boat. But maybe there's an iceberg, right? Maybe there's a little bit of a shallow water that he doesn't know about. No, every boat has people that when they're in close to shallow water, they have people with probes making sure that they're not getting caught in shallow water. So even though the front is it could be up and they won't realize it, in order not to come ashore, they have someone probing to make sure that it's deep enough. Rav Nachman Yitzchak said to Rav Bar, and according to Rav Chisda and Rabbi Bar Avuna, who say that you need a platform of 4 and this quasi-private domain built into it, whether Rashi a little lip, but Tosis at full 10 tefachim. What about Shevchin? Where are you going to pour the water from the dirty water from the boat into the sea, into the river? How are you going to get rid of that? So fine, you've explained how you bring water in through that private domain ledge that you make 4x4 with a hole in it. But how are you going to pour water out? And if you're going to tell me that I pour it through that same spot, no one wants to bring water in for drinking, washing through through the same hole that you're going to pour the water out, your dirty water out of. That's disgusting. Gemara says the shadli adafna. You throw it onto the wall of the boat. So even though that it's going to end up going into the water, even though by his power essentially it's going to roll into the water. That's not, since Carmelis is a rabbinic protection of public domain, so therefore the Chachamim are always more lenient, and they did not make it only if you're actually carrying or actually throwing it, but if you throw it onto something and from there, which is a private domain, the wall of the boat, and from there it runs into the water, that's going to be permissible. And how do I know that that's true? Netanya, because we learned the Brisa. The Brisa says, you're not allowed to carry from the water, from the sea into a boat, or a boat into the sea, as we just saw. And now we go to Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer Amuka Asara. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the boat itself, on the inner side, has a depth of 10 tefachim, so then the inside is a private domain. Ve'ein gavoy asara, but on the outside it's not 10 tefachim, meaning that because boats sink into the water, so you can have the water surface on the outside is less than 10 tefachim, 30 inches from the side, but on the inner side it actually goes deeper and it's 10 tefachim. Then you can carry from it to the sea, but not from the sea into it without making this ledge as we just saw. But you can't carry from the sea in there. But I could carry from the boat into the sea. How do you do that? It's also carrying from a Carmelis, from a private domain, from a Shusayachid into a Carmelis. And why is it permissible? Why can't you carry from the water into your boat? Because you're carrying from a Carmelis, from this rabbinic public space into your boat, your private space. But yet, why can I carry from my boat into the water? I'm doing the same thing. I'm carrying from a private domain, from Rosh Hashanah into a Carmelis. Must be that Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to carry means that you're pouring it onto the edge, onto the wall of the boat, and by itself it's going to run into the water. So indeed, this is good proof that by a Carmelis, we're not concerned with your power, even though it's coming from your power. As long as it's not directly but your action, it's going to be okay. For the next Gemara, we need a couple of halachas we saw already, but just an introduction of these halachas. Number one, we have the concept of within 3 tefachim, which is, we call it a lavud, within 3 tefachim, something that's 4 wide, that will count as one space of a 4 wide reshus hayachid. However, if it's narrower within 3 tefachim, even though, meaning it's a sharper angle, even though that eventually gets 4 tefachim wide, which is the minimum for a private domain, since it doesn't become so narrow within 3 tefachim, which is lavud, so wide within 3 tefachim, so the bottom point of the boat would be 1 finger breadth, and it would take 6 tefachim high from the bottom of the boat in order to reach 4 tefachim wide. So it's a very narrow bottom of the boat. That would not constitute as a reshus hayachid, a private domain. And this is the concept of how tapered or how wide this space is. We saw this earlier in regards to the top of a bed, whether it's considered it has a roof or not, depending on how sharp the angle is. That if it doesn't have a tefach wide within 3 tefachim, it doesn't count as a roof. Here's the same 4 tefachim wide. In the inverse, the bottom of the boat is not going to be wide 4 within 3 tefachim. It doesn't count as it has a bottom. That's one concept we're going to talk about. The other concept is mechitza teluya. You have a wall hanging, and we saw this a few days ago. And if you have a wall that comes down, but it doesn't come all the way down to the bottom of the space that you want to block off, and if it's not loved, if you don't have 3 tefachim, if you have at least 3 tefachim or more space from your surface to the wall, it's going to count. It's not going to count as a wall, and it won't count as a barrier in space. This is called a mechitza tuluya. And even though we usually say good aches mechitza, we say that if I have a wall, sometimes we're going to say that the wall comes down and creates a barrier. Here, we would not say good aches mechitza. We would not say where exactly we say it. We don't say it. There's a big discussion. Sometimes we'll see in the Gemara we say it, sometimes not. Here we would not say good aches mechitza. However, we do say mechitza teluya, this concept of a hanging wall over water. So if I need to divide water, you live in Venice and you want to divide the water in front of your house from your neighbor, or in general, you have a ledge, a porch over some sea, ocean, lake, and you want to be able to draw water in, or you want to know what's your water. So a mechitza teluya, a hanging wall over the water space, does count as a wall. So those introductions. The Gemara is now going to talk about this boat that is at such a sharp angle that at the bottom that it is narrower than 4 tefachim within 3 tefachim of the bottom. So it doesn't go out of 4 tefachim wide within the first 3 tefachim of the bottom of the boat. So it doesn't have a bottom. So the wall of the boat essentially is hanging without a bottom surface. Can you carry in there in that space? So do we say it's not a private domain? Now, Tues asks, so what if it's not a private domain, but it's also not a public domain, and it's also not a Carmelis, because it's not a rabbinic public domain. So what it is essentially a makom pater, an exempt space. So that makes it more permissible to carry, not less. But nevertheless, that's the way Rashi learns and explains this Gemara, and we're going to go with that. Amar Ravuna. So Ravuna said, Hani bitziasa de Meshon. These small boats, Rashi calls them in Old French kayati. I don't know what that is. It may be similar to like kayaks or something. But it's a small boats that have a deep and very narrow bottom. You're only allowed to carry within 4. And here too it says arba, and they change it to arba amos. 4, it's not 4 tefachim. You're not allowed to carry in such a place 4 amos, 4 amos, about 6 feet. That's only if there's no 4 tefachim floor or bottom within 3 tefachim of the bottom. But if within the bottom 3 tefachim of the first 10 inches, let's say, of the floor of this, the base of the boat, it gets wide 4 tefachim, let's say 12, 13 inches, less lamba, then there's no problem because that counts as a base. Additionally, if you fill the bottom of the boat, that sharp pointy area, with whether it's logs or wood or other substance you need. So now it's filled. Imalinu, kaniv, urbani, if you fill it with reeds, then it's going to count as less on, but it's not going to be a problem because it's full. So now the floor of your private domain, your boat, is going to be wider than 4. Maskif la Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman challenged and said, what's the issue here? You're saying it doesn't count as a private domain on account that it doesn't have a wall and a floor. Well, wherever your floor is, let's just say the wall comes down from wherever it is. If there is a wall higher up, let's just say that wall goes straight down. Mila Tani, didn't we learn similarly? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, I mean, not kind of Rishus HaRabbi. Somebody puts a beam. Somebody puts a beam in a public sphere, and on top of it, they put a basket. And you took something from the public sphere, from the Rishus HaRabbi, and you threw it into that basket. Now, the basket being 10 tefachim walls, the basket being 4 tefachim wide, is going to count as a Rishus HaYachid, as a private domain. Even though it doesn't have 10 tefachim, but nevertheless, we're going to say it counts as Rishus HaYachid because the walls of the basket come straight down all the way to Rishus HaRabbi, and it's a virtual wall descending from the walls of that basket. So you see that we pull down the wall that's there. So too over here, so too over here we should say this halacha that the wall that's above comes down and closes off the space, and therefore it counts as a private domain. Did you not hear the explanation of who Yehuda said Amarav in the name of Rav? And some say Mishum Rabbi Chia. But Taniela, that we learned in a brisa, the Chachamim disagree and they say that you're exempt on account of that. It does not count as a closed off area, and the mechitzas do not come down. So the Chachamim disagree. Therefore, we don't say mechitza teluya. A hanging mechitza comes down and closes off the space of a public sphere. So to over here, Amalei Abaye. So Abaye responded to Rav Yosef and said, what are you talking about? You don't agree that there's a concept of good achas mechitza? We learned it in a brisa. We have a beam that is in a public sphere, and the top of it is 4 tefachim wide, and it goes up 10 tefachim. However, it's tapered. It's not smooth, and the inside, the lower side of the beam comes inward and is less than 4 tefachim. The aim be'ikra dalit, but the base of it doesn't have 4 tefachim. V'yesh bekatza shalei gimel, and it tapers off sharply from the top enough that you even 3 tefachim from the ground, there is no 4 tefachim wide. So you can't say lavud. You can't say that we're going to, as we usually say, within 3 tefachim, we just close off space in halacha. So we can't say lavud. Yet, we learned in the brisa, v'zarak v'nachal gabav chayiv, if somebody throws something on top of it, he's chayiv. So we see that it does count. The wall comes down as a 4 space, even though that in the bottom, it really is narrower than 4. You see that we do say that the mechitza, meaning the wall, comes down and it closes itself off because you have 4 tefachim wide at the top. It comes down and closes it off at the bottom as well. So too here, we should say gurachas. So Rav Yosef is going to explain the distinction that he thinks is distinct between the beams in the public sphere and this boat. Midir, so is that really a comparison? By a hanging wall, the animals can go through it. Little goats can go through the 3 tefachim, the 10 inches beneath it, and it doesn't count as a barrier. But by the beam in the public sphere, that counts as a good wall, because actually nobody's going to go underneath it, because you do have a base. you have a base that's 3 tefachim wide, 2 tefachim wide. So animals are not going to crawl into that little crevice and walk through it. They may hide in there, but they're not going to walk through that space because it's only 1 tefach open from above it. So there you can say that the wall comes down and closes it up. But in the case of a hanging wall, animals walk straight through there, and that doesn't count as a barrier at all. Well, then what's your question about the boat? By the boat, it's not a good hanging wall on account of that fish can swim through there. No, that doesn't count as breaking a barrier because that's not a visible a breaking of the barrier because the boat wall goes into the water, and what happens beneath there is conceptually not a barrier, because not visible. It doesn't break the concept of a wall going down, and therefore by a boat also we should say the wall goes down and counts as a barrier. And how do I know this is true? That what happens underneath the water doesn't count. And how do I know this? The boy Rav Tevela Miravin or Rav, and Rav Tevela asked of Rav, Mechitza Teluya Ma'ashatate Bechurva. Can a hanging wall, meaning a wall that doesn't reach the bottom, in a ruin, where some of the upper part of the wall is intact, but the bottom has collapsed, does that count as a barrier? And he said, no, a hanging wall does not create a halachic space. It does not permit the space within it to count as a private domain. And we turn to Kuf Aleph Amud Beis. Only in regards to water. And that's the case that we were talking about before, that you have this ledge coming out of the boat or a porch coming out in front of a house, and you create besides for the 4x4 platform, you create a ledge over there by the boat or over by a porch by the house. You have a 10 tefachim wall coming down, and then you're going to say that the wall comes down all the way to the water. And this concept of a barrier coming down, a mechitza, hanging mechitza, will work there. And the reason is, it's a leniency that the Chachamim made in water. Water, as we said, is not a Rishus Harabim Daraisa. It's not a Daraisa, Torah level public sphere, public space. Rather, it's a Carmelis, or it's a rabbinic public space. And so the Chachamim were lenient with a hanging wall for that. They said, we're going to be strict about it and consider it a public space, but lenient in regards to water. And made these leniencies that you can have a hanging wall. But why does the hanging wall work, but fish can go through it? So you see that a fish going through does not eliminate the strength of the barrier. The visible barrier down to the water is sufficient to count as a wall. So back to the boats in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah spoke about 2 boats that are connected to each other, that are tied to each other. You can carry from one to the other. So Pshita, that seems pretty obvious. They're tied to each other. They're one. So the Gemara says, Amar Rava to tell you that even in the small boats, the little rowboats that are between these 2 big ships, even if it's not tied to it, since it's between the 2 and really held in place by the 2, you can carry through there as well. Amalei Rav Safra. So Rav Safra responded to Rava, Moshe, you're a great teacher to me, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? So he's showing him great respect and says, my teacher, as great as Moshe, Shapik Kamras, are you sure that this is correct? That you can carry between even on a small boat that's not connected and not tied to the 2 because the 2 are tied. But our Mishnah had said, Metaltal Mizulazu, that you can carry from this one to that one, meaning from one of the tied boats to the other, and not into a third boat that's not tied. Elamar of Safra, rather of Safra says, it's needed to tell in regards to the halacha of eruv. We colloquially use the word eruv as the dimensions, or essentially the walls of where you're allowed to carry within. But really, those are the mechitzos. Those are the walls, the barriers. What is the eruv? The eruv is the box of matzah at the top of the bookshelf in Kesser. It's the food, the shared meal that everyone that's within that space shares to make it a communal space. So the halacha is two people who want to make an eruv. I have my courtyard, you have your courtyard, or as in our case, I have my boat, you have your boat, and we tie them together so we can carry for one another, but we need another thing. We still need to have a shared meal. We both put a bread in together, and then we have a shared meal. That's the eruv. To carry from one to another. Kedetanya, like the Brisa says. Svinas kashura zubazu. Boats that are tied to each other. If they belong to one person, great. So you don't need an eruv. It's all one person's boats. However, if they belong to two different people, they need to make an eruv. Ma'arvin, they make an eruv, meaning a shared meal. And then you can carry from one to the other. Nifsaku nasru. Now, if during Shabbos, somehow they become detached. Now you can't carry from one to another because they're two separate spaces, because you have a carmelis between them. Chazur v'niksharu. If they come back and somehow get retied, bein shogegin, whether it was done inadvertently, meaning the person forgot you're not allowed to tie it on Shabbos, or they forgot it was Shabbos. Bein mazidin, whether it was done intentionally and you're not allowed to typically do that, but the person did. Bein anusin, whether they were under duress. Bein mutin, they were mistaken, they didn't mean to tie it at all and something else happened. Chazru later and rishon. Since at the beginning of Shabbos they were a combined space, and on Shabbos it returned to that space, you're allowed to continue carrying. And similarly in the campgrounds, which is essentially people hanging up curtains, and they make their own spaces, and they make an eruv between them. So everybody's got their own curtain hanging, their own tents, and they make their own space. And then one of the barriers falls. So beforehand, ma'arvin metaltanim izulazu. You can make an eruv and carry from each curtain space to another. Niglalu, if they came off. Nasr, now you can't carry because it's missing an outer wall. Chazur v'nifreshu, if somehow it got back put back up. Bein shogegin, whether it was done inadvertently, the person forgot it was Shabbos or forgot that you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Bein mazidin, whether he did so intentionally, knowing that it's prohibited and did it anyhow. Bein anusin, whether it was under some duress. Or bein mutin, whether he didn't mean to hang it up and somehow that happened. Chazur l'teran rishon, they go back to their original permissibility, and you're allowed to carry in there. Shekol machitza shanasa b'Shabbos, because this is the general rule. Any barrier that's made on Shabbos, regardless bein reshagi bein b'mezid, whether it was done intentionally or unintentionally, shema machitza. It does act as a barrier. It acts as the machitza. So even though you weren't allowed to put it up, but somehow you did, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it works and it counts as a machitza. However, the Gemara is about to make a distinction for whom. Aini, it's not so. It's only going to be to exempt you if you tossed from your private domain into public domain. You can't carry in it. Sorry, it only is to obligate you if you carry from the public domain to private domain and vice versa, because it counts as a barrier. So you have a real rishus hayachid, a real private domain. But in regards to carrying from one boat to the other, from one tent to the other, from one encampment to the other, you're going to be usher to carry because you made this wall on Shabbos. The Gemara says, Kiyat med Rav Nachman. Yes, it's true, but when did Rav Nachman say that you're not allowed to carry? Amazing. If it was intentionally done, the person knew he's breaking Shabbos and did it anyhow. So, okay, they did that. But that now you can't count it as a Shabbos wall in order to carry inside this space. That's a fine that's punitive. They say, look, you broke Shabbos, we're not going to give you the benefits of breaking Shabbos. But if you did so unintentionally, or you didn't mean to do it, or it was done under duress, so then you're allowed to carry in there. And because essentially it does count as a real mechitza, and it's only punitive that you can't carry, as a Rahman said. But it is a real mechitza, it does work, and so therefore too, the two boats that were retied on Shabbos will count as a good connection. Itmer, it was said, Amar Shmuel, Afilik Shuras B'chut HaSarvel. Shmuel said, even if these two boats were tied with a lace that's used for your hoodie, right? It's the opening of your shirt, has a tie, even if that string, that pretty flimsy, weak string, it's not a rope like you need for ships, it's still going to count as a connection. So, hey, Chidam, the Gemara asks, what's that about? Is it actually keeping the two boats together? Pshita. So then it's holding it together. And if it cannot keep the two boats together, in other words, it's going to snap. Amai. So why does it count as being connected? The Gemara says, you're right. It must be that it keeps it together, because it doesn't keep it together, it doesn't count as anything. But Shmuel's coming to distinguish it from a different halacha that he himself had taught in regards to Tuma and the connection of boats.
You were just frozen.
From where?
I think. I feel sure it's Sarbal.
So Shmuel had said that even if it was tied together with this string from a boat, like a hoodie, from the top of a shirt, nevertheless it'll count as connection to the boat. So the Gemara says, what's that about? If it can keep the boats together, so it can keep the boats together, and if it can't keep the boats together, so what is it? Why would it count? So the Gemara says, so no, this could actually work. It's strong enough to keep the boats together. So why did Shmuel have to tell us that even such a string counts as holding the boats together? It's to distinguish from a different halacha that he said in regards to Tumah. Shmuel is coming
again.
And Shmuel is coming to tell us.
Frozen again.
Sorry?
It was frozen again.
From where? What's?
The Enya Chol Amidan.
So Pshita, Ide Yachal Amidan, if it can, if it's holding together, Amai. So if it can hold it together, so why does it work? La'olam the Yachal Hamidan. So the Gemara says, no, really, it could hold it together. Really, it could hold it together. So what's the issue? And Shmuel is trying to hold himself back. It is meaning he's coming to exclude a teaching that he said elsewhere, because he had said elsewhere in regards to Tumah that you need a metal chain. The Tanan we learned, Kasher b'dava ha'ma'amida, maybe la Tumah. If you tie a boat to a space that has a Tomei in it, so it's now within the covering of an ear space of a Tomei space. But so it's going to bring the Tumah, since it can hold, it's held together in its space. However, but if it's held with something that cannot hold it together, so it's not going to transfer the Tumah from one to the other. And in regards to that, Shmuel said, it's talking about that it's held by a metal chain. Because as we know, metal is it transfers Tumah from a dead person as a principal Tumah. It says the deceased and the sword, to tell us that the metal of a sword is the same primary source of Tumah as the deceased person himself. So metal transfers Tumah from a deceased person as a primary, not as a secondary. Meaning it doesn't become Tumah from the dead person and then transfer Tumah at a next level, but rather it itself becomes Tumah. And so therefore, in regards to Tumah, we see you need a metal chain. Aval in Shabbos, but in regards to Shabbos, Kivan, the Yachal Hamida, as long as it can hold itself together, and all you need is a hecker, you need to recognize that they are held together, even with a dingy small rope, as long as it's holding the two boats together, that counts as sufficient to make them a joint domain.